order. The board wants to provide ample opportunity for public comment on matters that come before us. Input is important. If you wish to address an item already on the agenda, we ask that you do so when that item comes up for discussion. If you have a comment on a matter not on the agenda, this is the time during our meeting for such comments. The board would like to remind everyone in attendance that to avoid violations of individual rights of privacy, a member of the public wishing to address the board during this time will not be allowed to make comments about any student, staff member, or member of the general public during this time. Does anyone wish to speak at this time? Okay, so it is Wednesday night. I don't like to have to meet on a Wednesday night, but we did it because we needed to, but hopefully we can keep it short and sweet. Take it away, Mr. Wilker.
I am going to keep it short and sweet. So I guess what I am asking of the board, first of all, is to maybe have a discussion to decide which direction the board would like to lean. But with the governor lifting the mask mandate, and I've included everything the MTSBA has put out to say, school boards have the right to make their own decisions on this. And I guess what I'm going to say we are asking of the board is to go ahead and approve, implement the mask mandate district-wide until further notice. And I guess I'd put further notice because seriously, if for some reason we get teachers vaccinated and we get them past the 14 days, past the second one, and we have a majority, some people may say no, that we may look at relaxing that mask mandate and keeping everybody safe. But I guess I'm asking basically to make a motion that we will continue to honor the mask mandate. And then next, I think we need to look at updating our policy 1905. Of course, that'll take 2 readings. That's why I am asking to maybe have the board officially say we will continue to do that in a motion, because to change this policy that involves a mask mandate will take 2 readings.
I think we can do that.
We can suspend. We can suspend.
We asked them, MTSBA, and they said, you're not supposed to do that anymore.
Oh, really?
They said emergency, at least that's the last I had read as to one of them.
What we actually can do is to approve this on first reading using the second option, which is the face covering. If that's what we agree to, or whatever option.
Yes, the first option, of the first options, we want, what did I say in my thing?
Option 2.
We want option 2 in the first of the 2 options, and then we want option 1. Because there's 4 options. There's a 1 and 2 and another 1 and 2. So I want to make sure we clarify.
On the face covering portion of that, if we use, if we choose an option under that second face covering line 38, face covering personal protective equipment, would that be the same as having a motion to approve or disapprove?
If it requires 2 readings to approve it, then it wouldn't go into play until probably our next board meeting where we did a second reading on 1905.
But
That would be my
it's our
concern.
current policy, right? We're not going to change that.
That
It
is
is our
our,
current policy. We're just not going to change it, or whatever we choose to do. But we're under this policy, basically option 1 at this time, on page 38, or line 38, or line 40, excuse me.
I believe so.
So if we don't change it, we're still under the same, correct? Because the governor has their policy is it's a district decision.
But this policy here was the MTSBA model policy that they constructed, so everything
And that's the one
underlined.
that we're currently operating under.
Did it?
No, it is not. Everything
Well,
underlined is
They
new.
amended it last.
Yeah.
We are operating under 1905.
Under 1905.
But they did make updates to this to reflect the 2.
All the underlines are new.
Yeah, so we are.
But we aren't currently on this
But
policy.
As Todd says, we're still under 19. And when does that sunset? When is the termination date?
We're in
June
still-
of 20,
Oh, okay.
well, go
As
ahead.
long as the emergency is still in effect, correct? And we declared an emergency.
Right.
which expires June of 2021. The end of
We are
June.
still under.
We're
that.
still under that.
Yes.
So we can make a decision on this first reading, and then second reading will still be covered under the existing policy.
You think we'll still be covered for
Well, it doesn't
the
expire
mask?
until June. Under the emergency policy?
Yes, yeah, we're still covered under the emergency policy, but I don't think it specifies that the school district itself is doing a mask mandate. That was based under the state mandate.
So,
That-
But
that's
we
where my
approved-
concern
We
is.
approved the policy.
Yes,
We need to look probably and see if the original 1905 stated that.
I can go make you a copy of that. I didn't bring my original.
Yeah,
I think it did, it had to.
Would you like me just to run and,
And I guess the reason I'm saying that is that we don't have to then, that will make sure that we're covered until the second reading and this is approved.
sure, that makes sense.
Wasn't sure.
yeah, I think there's been some modifications, so yeah, the second, approve the first reading today on whatever we choose, the second reading. We can even have a special meeting to do that if we felt we needed to.
Yeah, because just the way I read this, everything underlined talks about the school's right to mandate that the school will mandate that.
Yeah, and so Jason's gonna grab that, I guess, but my understanding is that we are under 1905 and option one, I think, of 1905, but everything under optional face coverings underlined is all new.
Yes.
It's all rewritten, and there's two options around that.
I do not have it. I thought I did.
Would you like me to go get the original?
I think we probably should.
Okay.
I carry too much stuff and I still don't have it.
Yeah.
So this 1905 that we're looking at is the rewritten one or the updated?
Yes, this is what he kicked out, I think, Friday
Okay,
afternoon or Friday.
I'm just trying to get it straight in my head.
It was late Thursday or Friday,
Okay.
or even over the weekend or something.
So this is the revision of that under the current circumstances of what the governor has.
Yeah.
And this would be MTSBA's revision.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
I guess while we wait, if we adopt that option one, there is some repetition in lines 7 and 9. It says students to wear a face covering, mask, or face shield, and then a couple lines down it says it again, face covering, mask, or face shield. I'm not sure.
Well, but there's a definition
difference
around
there.
it though, with on line 9, face coverings. They're defining face covering faces. Oh, I see, there's face covering, I see what you're saying, yeah. But that part though is defining what that means.
I think
But he said this
this is just the model
model.
policy.
Well, and also, if you look at the top, look at the second word on the very top.
Underline
first,
section.
Statutes.
Yeah, the statutes and regulations.
You know, that's the thing about,
Top, line 1,
doesn't know when.
line 1, line 1, third, where is it here?
The second page that I had, funny, because option 2 is after option.
Okay.
There's two options, so see physical distance,
Oh,
option one,
Sherry?
option two.
The statutes, page 3, line 1. Second
The first
word.
one's physical distancing, option one.
So what is this? This is,
That one is under physical distancing.
It says statutes.
yeah, that's not gonna work.
Yeah, they got, so you need to pick up option 1 and 2 out of physical distancing as well?
Yes, we have to, we have to pick one of them.
Oh, I suspect that distancing mask,
The recommendation is option 2 of the first one.
okay.
So if you go to the second page, it's got the option 2 and the option 1.
Right, yeah, or that's, yeah.
Okay, gotcha, thank you. And this is just their model policy that we would adapt to fit our needs, is that? Or
Well,
would we-
we're operating currently under the 1900, or we've adopted all of the 1900
right.
series policies that came out with.
As the code, under the code.
Correct.
Right, okay.
But we don't know if we chose option one or option two.
Well, there was neither one of those
Okay.
options in the original.
That's what
Okay.
Eric's
That's what
going
we need to
to-
verify, is if the original one had a mask amendment or a mask mandate of any kind. in
Okay.
it. And if it doesn't, then I think that changes things.
Yeah, because there's like option two, there's some things in there that we won't be able to do, so.
Same with option one,
Mhm.
not even remotely able to comply with it.
Right,
No, those are the non-underlined options, correct?
Yeah.
under physical distancing. yeah.
Under physical distancing, okay.
It's just not either. In time, like a day.
Okay, really quickly, which on option two, just on option two, because the first, on line 9, it says to the extent possible, so I think that applies to much of those areas. What is the area that you're seeing as being problematic?
Christine.
I'm sorry.
Nobody's listening.
Oh, no one's listening.
I'm sorry. We're studying.
You are speaking.
I
we
actually
are
was
listening.
listening, Sean.
Yeah, I know which one.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Dawn.
So I was looking at option one, under the physical distancing, which just completely not practical.
Well, that sort of is more of a concrete model, and it seems option 2 is more abstract in nature, because as I was previously saying, okay, sorry. Line number 9, to the extent possible on option 2.
Yeah.
So that means to me, throughout that, we do as well as we can, and if it's not quite, that's, what's problematic? What's problematic around number 2, option 2?
Well, it says the very first line, it says delivered to the same group of students each day, and the same teachers will remain with the same group in the same separate and designated room each day.
To the extent possible. And then if that's not possible, that's part of the deal.
Just do the best you can.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, and I think that was written to give you
Well,
that.
and yeah, the first the 1900 policies were written to be a Band-Aid to get through all of this, so
Super general.
this isn't gonna be
Okay.
something that will be in place in perpetuity, so.
Well,
I mean, the thing is, we have not done that from
Day one.
the beginning. They do.
well, and
But
so
you are
it wasn't possible. I mean, to the extent possible.
We
that-
are co-awarding, keeping grade level with
Yeah.
grade level.
Right,
Yes,
right,
which was our solution to that from the beginning.
right.
It's just not in this designated room.
I'm just saying that the option 2 is written in such a way that these are sort of recommendations. It's great if you can do it, but if it's not possible, it's not possible.
Lines 24 and 28 are very problematic.
Okay.
Mhm.
Which again, we've done by, I guess, to the best of our ability,
Yeah,
without
we-
implementing line 24.
And that goes back to line 9, to the extent possible, I think, I feel like.
Yeah, we have it staggered, but not to the point where, you only have one grade level at a time now.
Right.
And same with having a whole different bell system for the high school and stuff, that's not possible either, but it's been working fine the way that they did it.
Yeah. So I think,
We're doing well.
I think option 2, to me, because of to the extent possible, it provides that flexibility that you can try, but that's it. Option 1 says you're gonna do this, and this.
Right.
And I think, to me, I don't know what you guys all do, but it seems to me that that'd be unreasonable
Yeah, it's just
with
like,
this kind of environment.
because it also talks about secondary students getting a grab and go lunch, so.
Okay, so it does clearly say the school district requires all staff and students to wear cotton-based masks to protect colleagues and peers while present in any school building. So it was there in the original 1905.
Okay.
Okay. So we are covered by the original.
Yes,
Nice. Good call, Kevin.
yeah.
The amendment,
we
or
could-
the option to amend it, basically, is that how you?
Would we amend it, or are they so substantial that we should probably approve it for first reading?
If,
Because it wouldn't change anything until we do it the second time, without, in a different situation, right? Until we've done 2 readings, it would not go in.
Correct. I guess if we look at these, like under physical distancing, option 1 doesn't appear in the original policy. So,
It was removed.
it's in the new one, but it's not in the old one.
The old one had 2 options.
Oh, it did, okay.
And so this is just the.
Okay, the one that we're currently,
Post-second
the one that we're currently operating on, it's not there. And actually, the option 2 is what we see there under physical distancing.
Yeah. So they
Yeah,
label.
so it-
I guess what I'm kind of getting at is, how much are we actually modifying the policy we're actually operating under? We're not really modifying it, depending on what options we choose, but I don't believe that we're going to be significantly modifying the one that, or maybe not at all, the one that we're operating under.
We're not. The thing that the updates for the new 1905, try to infuse the legal authority under the Constitution, local control of the Board of Trustees. And that's what sets off the required face coverings.
Yeah, to me, the options give those people that don't want to do it the ability to allow.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of seeing here too.
And where we-
well, and I see what Todd's mentioning too, because under, and then not that we choose option 1 for that new group, I'm not saying that. But it does refer to, and that would be under the underlined option 1 under face coverings as personal protective equipment, and that may be the recommendation. But it does refer back to the policy is adopted, implemented, and enforced in accordance with the supervisory authority vested with the Board of Trustees in accordance with Article 10, Section 8 of the Montana Constitution, and so on and so on. I think this refers back to what Todd is saying, is that they try to rewrite and put more of the constitutionality into policy. Did I paraphrase that well enough?
Yeah, they're trying to, to bolster the authority of the district and the board to be able to make the decisions around requiring face coverings. It is there as a matter of policy for those people that want to read it. Whether it is in the policy or not, doesn't negate the fact that at least what our school board association is telling us is that we have the authority under the Constitution to do that. So, and also given the fact that our existing policy right now is effective through June of this year, honestly, I don't see a need to have to rush into this without having, if we have some time and some discussion about what the changes actually mean for this district, I think that we have ample amount of time to do that.
Because we're covered right now.
Yeah, and to your point, Mr. Wilkerson, about having at the outset, having the policy be effective until further notice. Our policy is titled COVID-19 Emergency Procedures. So we are operating under a declared emergency, and that declared emergency is until further notice. And so, if anything, honestly, I would rather see a policy that has an expiration on it that either is a goal that we work towards, or prior to that, then we actually deal with extensions.
I'm hoping June 30th is the end.
Yeah.
I mean,
But I don't think that we need to.
for us, it should be visited for next school year if it's not, because they're saying we should have everybody vaccinated by, they're hoping June. Hoping June.
I just, underneath our current policy and the expiration of that and the way that we're currently operating right now, I personally, I don't think that, rushing, for lack of a better term, to pass a replacement policy that, addresses whether we're able to, require a mask underneath our constitutional authority is really necessary. I think we could get some feedback, we could talk to the community, we can, have the discussions that we need to with the stakeholders that are affected by the policy. And
We
then,
listened to the stakeholders today.
We went to.
I wasn't impressed.
County board.
No, it's-
Really,
Yeah.
all this additional policy today, they have that option 1 under the physical distancing, which is not in the one we're operating under now. Option 2 is already in the 1905 that we're operating under. The option 1 under the face mask covering just expands upon that short paragraph that's in the existing line 24, page 2. And then you've got this whole option 1 section, which basically, we could drop into that. What this policy would do would drop that other page and a half of the support for maintaining the mask order. That's all we're really adding to it. And we'd still be under the same, there's another policy number for the expiration, and 1905 is listed under that expiration. So this expires June 30th regardless.
Yes, I believe 1900 has the
1900,
expiration.
yeah.
Whole 1900s.
Because the expiration date is not in this policy, it's in another one, but this number is listed, so no matter what we do, it's going to expire June 30th. So I guess the critical part is just if we want to approve or disapprove on first reading, and we would have to want to add option 1 and to under the physical distancing, or add option 1 or 2 under the coverings is the question on first reading.
when we entertained the 1905 policy, well, when the 1900 policies, all the 3 of them, the first draft had option 1 and option 2.
Oh, okay.
And once we approved that, then Mr. Wilkerson or Ms. Watson actually took out the option 1 out of the draft document because we selected option 2.
Okay.
And so that's why this doesn't have that in there. And so, yeah, we have, it would shorten it up even more because if we decided to go with option 1, that kind of undoes what our existing 1905 policy is.
Right.
The option 1 for which part?
I think he's referring to the physical
Under
distancing.
physical distancing.
Face covering, so not physical
We should have
distancing.
done option 1, 2, and A and B or something.
Yeah.
It's confusing to have
Well,
two sets
and
of option. one
Under,
and two.
under option 1, something, now tell me if I'm all out in left field on this. Under option 1, under required face coverings, okay? On the following page, lines 4 through 13, specifically line number 8. Now, and I don't recall seeing this in our current policy, and I'll just go ahead and walk through this a little bit for anybody watching. It says the school district also requires all staff, volunteers, visitors, and school-age students to wear a face covering, mask, or face shield while present in any outdoor school activity with 50 or more people or physical distancing is not possible or is not observed. Does that 50 or more people help in any way with some of the events that may be coming up towards the end of the year and being able to accommodate more people?
Specifically,
More parents, more spectators?
specifically, it says outside.
Exactly.
So, I mean, if we had a track meet, or if we had,
Or graduation outside?
if we did it outside, May's not a great month for graduation.
Oh, right, I
outside.
understand.
But, yes, no, I mean, yeah,
Because I don't think our current policy says that. I think it limits, it's really limiting in the number of people who are able to attend. That's the primary difference I see between what we have and one of these options. And I don't know if it makes any difference or not. I'm just saying that's what I see as a difference.
so if an updated policy was not adopted tonight, we're still operating under this, because, I mean, we're staring down possibly hosting 4 to 5 district tournament games next week. Now, we know 2 for sure, but we could literally end up hosting 4 to 5 here in our gym. So, I mean, there are, as long as we're operating under some policy where we have some semblance of,
And
We won't change anything.
authority.
Exactly.
We may accept this under first reading, but
Okay.
nothing's going to change.
I guess that's the one thing I think we just need to make sure we all agree and understand, that the policy we set in place from the beginning is what we are currently
Right,
still operating.
all right.
And when we eventually get, not so far down the road, eventually get to approving on second reading, if that's what we do, then this supersedes the old 19.
The authority to do this. Is that, I guess in my mind, I'm thinking maybe that's an important addition as soon as possible with the governor lifting mask mandates. I don't know. I'm just talking. I'm just asking.
I just think having the emails right there, here's the copy of it, of the governor's people saying, yes, you have that right. So as
Okay.
long as we have that documentation, it will support what we were
Okay.
able to
Okay.
And
do,
also,
in my
there's some
mind.
more, there's some additional detail in here about protocols, so.
So do we want to revisit that at the next regular board meeting?
Sure.
I think I don't feel I feel we're covered. I don't think it's
Yeah, I think-
substantially different.
Right, and I think that the important thing is, people out there, people on the camera, recognize that the board as a whole is agreeing with that. I think that's the important thing.
Yeah.
That this is what we feel is appropriate for our kids, for our students, and our teachers.
Well, you mean, and to maintain a mask mandate for the safety of all involved? Yeah.
And that, several of us went to that Board of Health meeting this morning, and there was a lot of county people, community people, against a countywide thing. And we didn't engage in that. We just simply asked the Board of Health for support in the decision that we were going to continue
Right,
to mandate.
right.
And
And how did they respond?
they didn't. They basically, they started it, they didn't have a quorum, so they couldn't make a decision
Oh,
today. So they took basically public comment,
okay.
but unless something changed after we left, they basically took public comment and they didn't respond to anybody.
I just think with the spectrum of perspectives that we have around this whole issue, taking the safe course to protect our students and their families, because they're going to take it home with them, to elderly people in our community. And I just think taking the safe road is just a more conscionable thing to do.
And I agree. I had a text message Friday night after it went out questioning, why we were doing it. And I explained it then. And I said the same thing at the meeting today. If we go back to those kids last spring, those seniors that lost their spring athletic season and all of the things that they should have been able to do as seniors, if you ask those kids, would you have stayed in school if we'd have made you wear a mask, but you got to do all those things? Those kids would have done that.
Yeah,
Okay? And that's what we're trying to do, is keep our kids in school so that they can do the things they want to do and not go behind educationally. You read the news, listen to the news, everybody that isn't in school is struggling, and their kids are struggling. And we're trying to avoid that.
I think I can speak for, the admin team too. I mean, if I'm wrong, obviously add or add anything questions is that, after dealing with this for months and months and months and, we're going through another big, something cycle and honestly, transmission school is little to none. I mean, and I really strongly feel the masks are definitely helping us in that area. So the contact tracing and kids spreading it in the school.
So we're doing something right.
I think so.
I believe so.
I feel like we
Okay.
are.
I think the evidence is there that we haven't had a massive explosion that was traced to the school. We have kids, faculty that have contracted it, and come to the school that has caused some contact tracing, but it has never just had this huge ripple effect where it took out classrooms and on and on and on.
So I guess in my mind, I think we're probably in agreement, I'm just restating what's in my mind, is that continue what we're doing, because we're doing something right, it's successful. And if there's some kind of consequence, liability, or whatever down the road, so be it. I feel personally like we're doing the right thing.
Okay, then we are good.
So we will do nothing with changing this as of tonight, right? Everybody?
Right.
Okay. Very good.
Do you need a motion to approve or recommend any of these motions, any of these options on first reading?
I guess that's what I'm asking, is if you think we need to do that, or if we're just gonna stay where we're at and delve into this
Well,
down.
to me, it seems like if we want to take a little more time to really review it, our next regular meeting is, I think, 3 weeks away, I
Okay.
think. If we could really understand the bits and pieces and parts of this a little better by that time, because this is hot off the press, like just a matter of days, right? So if we can understand the implications, and the farther reaching implications to other school districts, that would help us make a decision.
And I would say maybe consider what it would look like. What would need to be in place before we can make a decision that we can look a different direction
Set some
and limit it.
criteria.
Yes, do we have, if 90% of our staff members are vaccinated 14 days after their second vaccination, that we'd look at that. I mean, just throwing that out there. Because there is a point where our staff will be safe, and then we can look at more of the optional. Because if our staff goes, then everything goes. We're done. We're shutting down. And the whole point is to stay open. So, and I mentioned that today to the health board it's going to put a burden on the parents if we have to shut down. So we're going to do the best we can to stay open.
Yeah.
Very good.
All right.
Any further discussion on that? Okay, we will move on to the item, approval of the superintendent contract. You all know Kevin and I met Tuesday morning with Ms. Hedlund, discussed those ideas and topics. And then I know Todd has presented some other items on the contract itself, not so much things that we negotiated, but wording and clarification, but do you have anything to add first?
I just want to make sure that we do talk about, they had the 18 vacation days, and by law, it's 15. So it was just a thing. So it's 0 to 10 years is 15 vacation leave, and then 16 to so on was 18, and it goes like that. So I corrected that per MCA. And there was a policy listed in there that doesn't exist.
Right. But you also raised a question
Yeah,
And I went back and I cannot find that.
it's kind of hidden and it's probably not that big of a deal, but I did notice in the job description, it says that the duties are listed in the job description, and then in the job description, it states that, okay, let's see here. It says that it's the athletics, let me see where I can find it. Now I can't find it either.
You got that? You get the description?
It just talks about overseeing the athletics program within the job description, which is noted in the duties in the contract. I think it's fine because it also says that, you know, I have the authority to delegate responsibilities and that kind of thing. I just wanted to clarify that we will continue to have an athletic director because you guys have an incredible athletic program, and
Well, that's you.
I've done that before, and that and a superintendent is a lot of work. So, just wanted to make sure that the board plans on continuing to have an athletic director. That was my only question that I noticed once I got into the weeds after we met, that I thought everything was very fair and look forward to finalizing if there's a way we can do that.
I don't know what you.
I'm sorry, do we want to go ahead and excuse the principals? I don't know if they need to sit through negotiations. I mean, you're welcome to stay if you want, but.
Well, in the spirit of making this quick, because this is still on.
Well, yeah, we can,
Yeah.
it's not gonna hurt us to have that on. It's just, they don't have any part of this discussion, I don't believe, unless the board chair would like them here.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Now, and the verbiage that you, Todd, that you kind of put together there around that, in principle, it's just, more legalese, so to speak. Would that be fair to say?
No, I think it's clarifying a contract that has ambiguous terms.
So the legal aspects of it.
Yeah,
Okay.
For instance, you know, and sometimes when I look, I mean, I've got, this is part of an occupational hazard. And, you know, and as everybody I know on the board is aware of it, since we've got folks that are watching online, and since Mrs. Hedlund is not familiar with me, I do work in the legal profession. I am not an attorney. I've written and helped drafted from scratch and helped put together employment agreements over the last 15 years, 14 years of my professional experience. And there are things that are material in a contract, and there are things that are not. But when job duties are, as for instance, when there are policies that are referenced that are part of superintendent's duties and there are errors in the policies that are numbered, that to me is, it actually does have some impact. If you're beholden to somebody for something that is a promise or a duty that's to be performed, clarity of what the expectation is, or, you know, ramifications for non-compliance or things like that are you know, those are things that are important. And so,
Can I pause you for just, do you happen to have an extra copy?
I actually just made the changes of what to remove and the differences, and I was gonna give that to
Perfect, thank you.
Susie, if that's okay with you guys. Yes, I was just
Yeah, I
marking.
have it up on my
There's
computer.
this
Oh, but you guys made some changes, okay. Yeah, and it was Roman numeral 17 that just said, designs and implements a comprehensive, assumes responsibility for planning, organizing, and implementing an effective school athletic and activity program. Which, like I said, yeah, could be overseeing the athletic director. if we think of it that way.
Okay, now you-
Perfect,
There
thank
was
you.
moved, and then there's a couple others I marked that.
Perfect.
And I guess, you know, at the end of the day, Mr. Chairman, I guess maybe I'll state it as a point of personal preference or personal privilege. I have a skill set that I've tried to apply to the benefit of Mrs. Hedlund and actually to the district, as I would with a review of policy or any impactful document on behalf of the district. But if the board, I occupy one seat on this board, and if the board chooses that the contract that is, you know, has been sat down and negotiated and has Mrs. Hedlund's name in it, is the tool that we go forward, then that's the will of the board. I, you know, in good conscience would not be able to support that, but that doesn't mean anything against Mrs. Hedlund at all. There are things in the document that I think need to be fixed. And I don't believe that they're necessarily material terms as a part of the negotiation of employment, but as for instance, under section 2.2, it says, the agreement is conditioned upon the superintendent's maintaining the necessary certification and experience records or other records required for personnel files or for payroll expenses. My question is, does this mean that the superintendent is required to maintain certification? You know, all the credentials that are required under statute and administrative rule, and you know, to be able to meet those, have those qualifications, have the necessary experience, education, licensure, et cetera, in order to fulfill that job. That is not maintaining necessary certification, yes, and experience records. It's poor drafting, and I think that if it says that the superintendent has to be able to meet all of the requirements of state law to be a superintendent and maintain that, then that's what it should say. But that's not what the agreement says. So those are things that I think, again, aren't necessarily issues that are you know, terms of negotiation between the district and Mrs. Hedlund, but those are things that I think from a point of having a legally sound document are important. And so I laid some of those things out. There are very minor things in terms of phraseology and things like that in the agreements, but we have a section, for
Can we just
instance.
go through these one by one?
Certainly.
And take a look at them. So under 2.2, that's addressed under statute. Do you have the MCA number? Do we just need to add, according to MCA, the number of the statute? Can we just add that there to clarify that? Is that?
That's one way to
Okay.
deal with it. I mean, you know, the superintendent must maintain necessary certification, you know, must possess and maintain, you know, all the certification credentials to be a superintendent in Montana.
According to MCA.
Or, you know, according to Montana law. I don't know if there's something in administrative rule,
Oh, you don't know, okay.
or there are things that are specified in Title 20 that are relative to the superintendent, so.
Okay. According to, could we say according to the pertinent Montana, pertinent Montana
State
law?
law and rule.
Yeah, okay.
Didn't show up.
Okay.
No, I think this came later.
Would that be satisfactory?
Anything would be an improvement, I think on that, just to say that if the superintendent must possess those credentials and must maintain those credentials.
Okay. According to state law. Okay. What else do you have?
I guess they're in the red line agreement, and so,
One question here before we go too far. with this being videoed and getting into the very specific details of this, do you think that's something we should continue to do line by line?
I'm okay with it. I mean,
Mr. Chairman, are you suggesting we go into an executive session?
Well, I'm asking the question.
I think that,
I think this is a public document.
Yeah.
I think it's
Okay.
public information. So yeah, there's no rights of privacy.
Okay, very good. I just wanted to clarify that.
we can stop at any time, and that's up to Mrs. Hedlund too. I mean, she's the one that, you know, if she's uncomfortable with that, I think that, you know, if the conversation were to go that way, that she would be able to ask that we go into an executive session.
No, I agree. This is, you know, a public document, and furthermore, I agree with the changes. Some of these things that are crossed out and changed weren't this way in the one that was presented to me. So some of these things were accurate, like the number of days in the one that I received this week.
Right, 'cause we,
Yes, this was my contract, so,
Yeah, so,
and the one they
Kevin
presented
and
was
I
not.
made some changes
yeah,
from Eric's, but Todd didn't get that before you and Kevin and I met.
gotcha. Cause I'm like, wait a minute, mine didn't say that. So, anyways, so yeah, that's great. And, I appreciate Mr. Olson taking the time to be detail oriented, and I have no problem with that, so.
Very good. Continue on.
So you're okay with discussing a contract that you didn't look at?
I just read it. I'm a speed reader. No, I just read through and,
Okay. Because that's a little deceptive. That's
yeah,
a
no,
little
I
deceptive.
just read through, when I got handed the copy and looked at the changes. And I noticed a few things that were different, like I said, from the first one I had, so I'm fine with going through
Okay,
line by
all
line.
right.
Yeah, I think our intent is not to change anything
No.
materially to the contract, but to clarify what's already been
Right,
agreed upon.
right.
That's what it looks like,
Okay.
yeah.
So the next one is 3.4, is that correct? Todd,
3.4,
the duty days?
3.1
well,
was the next one.
3.1, actually, the last sentence of 3.1. So the agreement
Right, we did a 2-year
is
contract.
set for a 2-year term, it's a 2-year term.
Correct. 2-year term.
And so it says that the first sentence of section 3.1 discusses salary. And the first sentence says the salary, how the salary is actually going to be paid. The last sentence said the contract will be negotiated on a year-to-year basis. And so if the, you know, the contract itself is the body of the agreement. The amount of compensation, if that's subject to negotiation on a periodic basis within the term of the contract, that is different than saying a contract can be negotiated on a year-to-year basis.
Yeah, if you saw my email on that, I said simply, I suggested simply saying salary will be negotiated.
I
on a year-by-year
believe that,
basis.
that the correct word is that the salary will be negotiated
Yeah.
on an annual basis for a year-to-year
Well,
basis.
I guess it could be. The way it is now, the way that's stated now, we've got a 2-year agreement, and it may be negotiated if both parties are open to negotiating.
So we could change more than just the salary.
Yeah, if both parties are open to negotiating that. If not, we default to the existing.
So then that would be more like what we have in our certified contract.
Exactly. It'd be the
Where
same
we
as
say
CBA.
that these things are open for additional discussion.
It can be open for negotiation if both parties are agreeable, but if not, it defaults to the existing agreement.
So basically, I asked the board, would you consider this? And if they say no,
Then we
then
still,
no.
we just keep
Then we're
going
done
our
with that
existing.
conversation.
But that's on a mutually agreeable basis.
Exactly.
I think that's,
But then saying
maybe
that,
that's implied, maybe that needs to be stated, that it's mutually agreed negotiation instead of, we're not starting from scratch in the second year. We have an agreement, but it can be negotiated.
Historically, it has been,
Yeah,
historically,
See, and that's important,
yeah.
maybe that needs to be clarified.
you know, is
And
that,
historically, the salary's been considered, discussed yearly.
Yeah.
Whether it's changed or not, that's another matter.
Yeah.
Whether increased or not was another matter, but it has been discussed and.
yeah, and I mean, and that can be just, you know, upon mutual agreement of the parties, contract.
And we could add that phrase right to the end of that last sentence, where it says contract will be negotiated on a year-to-year basis upon mutual agreement of the parties.
Yeah.
And that clarifies that?
Yeah, and I think, like, I did review this with my legal, and they were comfortable with what it said. Because, for example, like dues, say I wanted to join another organization, so maybe it might not be salary, but I might be asking you guys to pay a couple $100 for me to join an organization or something like that.
And on your review, they were basically okay with the contract?
Yeah, the only things like I already mentioned were just clarifying the athletic director statement in the job description. And then I did specifically question this one because I said, you know, this is a 2-year, so what does that mean? And what are the opportunities with that? And so we did have a conversation about 3.1 and yeah, we were comfortable with it, so.
Okay. And you were comfortable, I guess, with the idea that it's implied that if we don't come to agreement to a change on the existing in the second year, that it defaults to the contract.
Mhm.
So that's implied, okay. All right. Well, we could add that phrase there to clarify, I think.
Right, upon mutual.
Upon mutual agreement of the parties.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
You're okay.
Okay. I think that, you know, those things like that, help clarify things for people who weren't.
Yeah, and policy and legislation, a couple of words made a big difference. I totally
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah, okay.
I had a change on section 3.2. There's a specific statute that deals with vacation leave benefits under Title II, Chapter 18, and it's actually 218-611 is the specific thing, because there are specific carve-outs for other entities that are comprised of local government under 218 sub 6 that don't apply to school district superintendents. There's a provision in there about employees of Montana State Prison, for instance. And so there's a specific vacation leave benefit statute, and that's right. The reference to all of Part 6 is.
Not, okay.
It is
So it needs to be, we need to change that to 611, part 6?
218-611.
Okay.
And then I know that Mrs. Hedlund, when she accepted the position, discussed that she has got a seat on the Board of Public Education, that there are periodic meetings. And I know that our section 3.8 discusses professional growth. I don't know, I guess professional development is semantics, but want to be able to, I thought that it was pertinent to one, change tense instead of his, her. It is, Mrs. Hedlund is a lady, so having that in there but also, you know, based on what the number of days were, I wouldn't want to see this board or a subsequent board say, well, wait a minute, the time that was negotiated isn't present in the agreement, so you don't get that. I believe in faith and, you know, fair dealing and all of that, and so.
We try.
In my estimation, putting that somewhere either in the duty days and or expanding section 3.8 to address the specific aspect of, you know, that, you know, professional, that the board encourages continued professional growth, and, you know, the board is fine with, you know, superintendent participating in professional school administrator associations, or, you know, education system, you know, state boards or commissions or whatever. And whatever, you know, the amount of days, you know, is. And if that's a moving target, then I think that is something that should be, you know, there should be a ceiling that is put on that, you know, per school year. And if the, you know, in a given school year, if the number of days it's 2 days every other month or something along those lines, and, you know, there's a stated, you know, these professional development days are at 8 days or 10 days per school year, and anything over and beyond that has to be used as personal time or as vacation time or some sort of a combination of it, then that's fine. But I think that since that was a condition of acceptance in the job, that's stating that reality that there are going to be these days important. That is up to the board, but that's my personal opinion that condition or you know, the plan for that to happen, it should be something that's stated in the agreement.
Yeah, we talked about that and felt that it fit under 3.8, and I think that your wording there is just fine. I think it fits there better than adding anything to 3.4, but that's just my personal thought. I know that's what Chair Noyes and Mr. McDowell and I talked about, is just that it fit under professional growth or development. Mr. McDonald and Mr. Chair Noyes made me feel comfortable with that was understood, but we can spell it out. I like the way you worded that there.
That is up to you. That is something that I have always been taught in drafting, that something should never be drafted one side, no matter what side you're on, and having something that reflects the intentions of both sides is the best practice.
And they're just 1 day meetings every other month currently. Sometimes if there's a long agenda, they can take a day and a half, but, so that there's 1 day, I know there's a 1 day meeting in March, for example, coming up, but, so that would be.
So I
Less than 10 days, that's school year.
if the board is has no preference, that's fine. Again, that was a suggestion I thought was in our best interest, as well as Ms. Headland's, to actually state that there were going to be those days that are not personal leave days, that are not vacation days, but there is definitely going to be an absence from the district.
So you would specifically define those days with the Board of Education and the number of days in that?
But if then the Board of Education changes its name or it morphs into something else.
Well, that's what I'm.
That's why I stated, it's a board or a commissioner. Maybe if
But should the number of days be stated then? I guess maybe that's just a better question. Rather than giving it a title, do we want to put, are you asking to put a number of?
I'm not asking anything, I'm making a suggestion. So,
I think putting a number of days would be tricky. I mean,
Yeah,
like I
we could do
explained
that.
to you, the Board of Public Ed, and I mean, there's a posted agenda and scheduled days. But Ms. Wilkerson, if you think about like the school administrator meetings and things that are important for us to attend,
Uh-huh.
and then to try to put a number on it would be a bit challenging, and then I don't know how, I think that's part of the professionalism, is just that we go to the things that are critical and important.
You want me to address that?
We be in the building as much as possible.
I agree with that perspective. You're responsible, we're paying you a lot of money to be responsible, and you're gonna go to those things that you need to go to. And if it happens to be a lot in one year and less in another, you're still doing those things to represent our school, to represent our kids, and in a professional way, without saying, oh, you only have 2 days to do this, or 3 days to do this. I exaggerate that point a little bit, but I personally think I leave it up to you guys as professionals.
So I'm on the co-op board, I'm on the School Services Montana board, I'm on the was on the Chamber of Commerce board. They probably wrote me off because I haven't shown up for a while. I leave it open. I think it's one of those things that I would leave it at the discretion of the board chair is what I would do. Or if you have a couple board members that you go, but you need to go to those things. The only thing that I would throw out there is one comment that has been made to me, I hate to say this, is that sometimes some superintendents are in so many things that they're hardly ever in the district or even at the school. And, I've always made it my priority to be here. Yeah, I go to my meetings and I do those things, but hopefully I'm in the district more than I'm out of the district is the only thing. That's the only reason I would say have somebody that just says, yeah, nope, that sounds great. That's a good one. Because, people notice when you're gone a lot,
I'm
but
taking this job to be home, not to travel anymore.
but I agree. That, I mean, there are so many things that flat out, I'd just say, if they make our district look good, then send the soup to it. So, they're putting a face with our district in a positive manner. It's great. Same with our kids. Send them anywhere that makes us look good because it's just good.
Well, you guys are professionals, in my mind, you can make that decision. If there's some kind of issue, that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, and I think, 3.1, if we do run into issues with that, having a renegotiable contract, if we do need to put some type of limit on that, we certainly can. And through our superintendent evaluation, we can certainly address that if it becomes an issue. But yeah, I think we talked in the meeting the other day that that's kind of a discretionary thing, but as long as the board is notified, I'm not a fan of having just the chair approve that. It needs to be the whole board.
No, I guess I was just throwing out just a suggestion that somebody.
Yeah, and as far as what we have written here in Todd's edits, I think 3.4 addresses duty days. I don't think we need to mix in the professional development into 3.4 for clarity purposes, really. And I'm a linear thinker, so I want to have that an issue addressed here and the professional development addressed in 3.8. And I wouldn't mix the two, yes.
the reason why that was put in there is because you've got day calculations that are right there. So you have all of the other day calculations for duty days, for personal leave days, for vacation.
Here's the thing, and we kind of talked about this in our negotiations. We have duty days and it's 240 or 260. But the superintendent, under their job description, job duties, and understanding that they take on, especially in a small district, we're not going to be standing over their shoulder clocking them in and out. they're gonna be here if the pipes break, if the, whatever needs to be done, that's their job to respond to that. And, I think, as far as, same thing in the discretion with the professional associations, professional development. We're not gonna be standing over the shoulder, every moment. I mean, they're gonna be making those decisions as they, in their own professional, the lens that they see through in their vocations.
The only thing, and I agree, 100%. The only thing I would just mention, just bumping back to 3.1 and term. When it says term, we're speaking about a number of days, and 3.1, the conflicting piece, it says contract rather than salary on that last sentence. They don't speak to one another exactly the same way. That's the only reason I would suggest using salary or something else within that last sentence. That's the only reason. The one is number of days, the term of the contract versus compensation. That's all.
Right, but we're saying that, like, if we limit it to salary, that would be the only thing that could be negotiated. And if we leave it as contract, there's other things that we could potentially negotiate.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree. Yeah.
Okay, so 3.8, we will adopt or bring in the edits that he has stated there, but remove what was added in 3.4. Is that correct?
I'd agree.
I'd say we leave 3.4 alone. I would add in the edits under school development. I think the first phrase that's added to sentence 2, school administrator associations or through an educational system, relate state board, commission. I would strike the,
Which one are we looking at?
professional development day under section 3.4. I would strike that phrase and leave an absence by the superintendent from the district for professional development will be treated as a I would remove the reference to section 3.4. I don't think that's necessary. It can be used in conjunction with vacation personal leave at discretion of the board, though. The leave of absence from the distance for professional development may be used in combination with vacation or personal leave at discretion of the board. I would strike will be treated as professional development day under section 3.4, but in absence. So I would strike that part. That would be my suggestion for clarification. I think
that makes sense, Mr. Gahn, to me, because say I was going to a meeting and then, my husband came with me, we were gonna stay an extra day. So then I would use does that make sense, Mr. Olson?
Yeah.
I would
that's
use
exactly why
a
that's
personal day for the Friday, but I was there at my meeting for the day before or whatever.
Under the renewal, non-renewal, is there anything?
Renewal, non-renewal, there's a combination, the contract is the thing that you refer to first. And section 1 talks about the term of the contract, and that the district may, with the consent, will extend the term of the agreement as permitted by state law. And talk about there's no expectation of continued employment past the contract term. So saying that non-renewal of the superintendent shall be in accordance with section 1 of the agreement, board policy, and applicable law. It just completes the thought, because termination, non-renewal, or renewal or non-renewal isn't just in accordance with board policy and applicable law. It's in the agreement and in board policy and applicable law.
Okay, everyone good with that? Okay, section 6.
And this is just kind of some poor drafting for, in my opinion, stating that, I mean, when it's, the section is titled mutual agreement, if the contract is signed by both parties, it's a binding agreement. And the agreement is terminated in writing upon mutual, upon whatever the terms and conditions are mutually agreed upon between the parties. The last sentence saying that after the superintendent has signed the contract, that they won't be released without written consent of the board. It's a contract. So it's a mutual agreement. So once the document, the contract is fully executed, it's terminated unless there's some other means of termination, that the contract is void for not having credentials or making those credentials. Once the agreement is signed, it's signed. And I would imagine that it's, the last sentence may have been added in there at some point in time as kind of like buyer's remorse. I bought the car, I took it back to the dealership 2 days later and said, geez, this wasn't a good deal for me after all. And there's a right of rescission in that type of a contract to deal with those kinds of things. But if a superintendent was hired, signed the contract, and came to us after the contract was signed, I don't know. I guess this would be in the case of maybe the contract was sent to somebody by mail and they signed it and sent it back. But if there was to be a complete termination of the agreement, there should be something that said, this agreement dated February 17th between the superintendent and the board is being terminated for whatever reasons that the parties mutually agree upon, signed by the superintendent, signed by the board, and that's how the agreement is terminated. It's not some sort of a consent that happens after the fact, because it's a bilateral agreement. And again, the suggestion has been made, and so that is the rationale for it, and that is up to the board. So I guess you can either.
Okay, so how would this read? How would that read, Todd? Upon its execution by both parties, this agreement would be terminated
in writing
upon
such
such terms. Okay.
conditions as are mutually agreed upon between the superintendent and the board.
Okay.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, looks good to me too. That's
Okay,
cleans that up.
6.2.
6.2 is the section says, if in the opinion of the board, the superintendent becomes unable to perform the duties of the job without reasonable accommodation, the district shall be terminated. Actually, with or without, in some employment agreements, you actually define what a disability is. It's the inability of the person who is performing under the contract. I can't do my job for 2 months, or I can't, there's some sort of a benchmark. And absent that, whether there is or is not an accommodation that they're operating under is a little incomplete. Because it can be with an accommodation or without a reasonable accommodation. A reasonable accommodation can be asked for by an employee of their employer at any point in time. And, I bring that up that actually I would say that, having either with or without reasonable accommodation, this agreement shall be terminated. That, disability under a contract becomes kind of a difficult thing, but I think that aspect only looks at the disability aspect of it and one small, kind of on one side, so.
Could we say that the board is, the board may choose to allow reasonable accommodation?
That's actually under federal law to have to allow a reasonable accommodation in order to do a job. It's what becomes reasonable or unreasonable is where the rub happens. If somebody says, I'm not able to
I can't come till noon anymore.
I'm blind and low vision impaired, so I need you to provide me with a 32-inch computer monitor, and I need something that's like a blind and low vision services provision. That, in most respects, would probably be considered a reasonable accommodation.
Mm-hmm.
There may be some employers that if you run a farm operation, that may not be a reasonable accommodation. And parties intend to work around it or not, but so, notwithstanding, you either, you would say with or without, but that is, I think that's an improvement, but it's the least of the issues that can manifest itself through the agreement if that were to come up.
So would you say that that's already in federal law?
The request for accommodation.
Right.
So how do you
Right.
want to change that? I guess I'm not following what you want to.
With or without?
With or without.
Because if superintendent is not able to perform, notwithstanding the fact that there's already been an accommodation made, that is a mitigating circumstance for them being able to perform their duties.
So say that again.
Whether a person has been granted, a person can still have, I'll phrase it a little different. A person can be granted a reasonable accommodation by their employer and still be determined to not be able to perform the duties of the job. I need this big screen and I need Braille and I'm requesting something because I've maybe got blind, low vision impairment. The equipment is purchased, accommodations are made, so that is with a reasonable accommodation. I'm still not able to perform the job.
Okay.
I think that's how it reads though already.
Yeah, See, if they're so if they claim that they still can't do their job, even though you've accommodated that you believe was reasonable, and they still can't say they still can't say, I'm getting a little wound here. If they still say that they can't do their job, even given those reasonable accommodations, obviously it becomes a non-reasonable accommodation, which still says exactly what you're talking about within what you've added. It's going around and around. I think it says.
Well, I think I understand what.
Then it's fine.
I see what you're saying, okay. But we're going around and around without any end point here.
Mhm.
We need to end. Correct. We need to end.
I think that, well, there's two conditions here, and by using with or without, I think we've addressed both of them. If there's a disability and the board allows for reasonable accommodation, and the individual is still not able to perform their duty, then the contract can be terminated. And it provides, if I'm understanding this correctly, I mean, those are the two conditions that are C there. And using the phrase with or without would address both of them. Because as it reads right now, the board can terminate even with a reasonable accommodation, which wouldn't be right. The way it reads right now, the board does not have to make a reasonable accommodation.
It infers that possibility.
Well,
I think it says that they don't have to provide it.
yeah, what it says right
You're
there
right.
says we don't
Federal
have to
law
provide a
says you
reasonable-
have to provide reasonable accommodations.
Yeah,
If
but
at that
what
point
it
they
says here
can't
is that
do
we
the job.
don't have to provide reasonable accommodation. So, and that's not right. So it should say with or without. I think that
Should be quiet.
Am I there or?
Okay,
the guy
so
that's
are
done
we
the
good
job.
with changing that to with or without? Okay, Ms. Edelman, does that?
I'm good with it.
I would personally attempt to just strike the additional part, leave it as is for now at least.
Well, what's in pink is already there.
What's in pink is here already.
Yes, that's what we have in the one that we already looked at.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure. Since I have.
So we're basically just changing or adding the word with or.
Okay, I'll just get it.
Okay. 6.4.
What's the likelihood that there's going to be consolidation of a school district within Broadwater County during the contract term?
And I'd agree with that point.
Boy, I don't know. What was the chances of getting shut down by a pandemic?
That's true.
Who saw that one coming?
There was a movie.
There was a movie.
About 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Yes, they had the cord on.
Yeah, the only way I can see it is if we absorb the smaller outlying district, but,
Yeah.
Which we don't have any.
Right.
yeah.
Way back when.
In our county.
They've come to
Raidersburg
ways.
and Cochran.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but that's not the case anymore.
So we just want to remove that.
Strike it and renumber the termination procedure as 6.4.
Okay, and under what was 6.5.
So the wrongful discharge from employment act is 392905. It's actually been changed since 1989. So you saying that we're working under the WDEA version of the law from 30 years ago would be incorrect.
So we just need to add the current statute?
You can just strike the parenthetical for 1989.
Okay.
The notation that I meant, that I put in the comment was that, it says here that, if discharge from employment is found to report to be wrongful, the superintendent is limited to damages. That's actually a material fact that's left up either to a judge or a jury. I wanted to just point that out because you can't contractually limit your damages, especially when it's an issue of material fact. So
Okay, so we're just striking the 1989.
1989, it's the current version of
Okay.
wrongful discharge from employment act.
Okay. Everyone's okay with that? Okay, 7.1.
7.1, venue is important there in contracts to say where it is that the dispute is going to be settled. All of the parties to the district are, all the parties, both, the district, us, if we were named individually, Ms. Hedlund, are in the first judicial district, which is Broadwater County. It's also Lewis and Clark County, but it's Broadwater County. So venue is an important issue for where it is that disputes get settled if it were ever to come to that.
That's pretty straightforward though.
Yep, sounds good.
And then they've actually got two parts in 7.3. It's not just a savings clause, it's called, the concept in contract law is called severability. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If there's a specific section that's deemed to be unenforceable or a judge or a jury rules in favor of it, you don't actually get rid of the entire agreement. And then the other part for entire agreement says the fourth line on 7.3 on the left margin where it starts to say all existing agreements, contracts, both verbal, non-verbal. That's a totality, that's the entire agreement clause. And for whatever reason, somebody lumped those two things together, but they're legally distinguishable.
But that's the only change, it's just the title, the heading of it.
Just the title and the explanation of why it's there.
Okay, so if we make these changes and send it to Ms. Hedlund again and send it to the board in its entirety, is that something that we can approve that tonight to go ahead and be signed? Or do we need to look at it?
I think absolutely we can. We can approve the contract as amended.
I guess we could probably do that. Do you feel comfortable with a changed contract to some extent? That's not what you saw originally.
Right.
Do you want to take it back to legal maybe or something?
Well, that's what I'm saying. We would send it back to her. She would have the option to review it
Inside.
before she signed it.
Yeah, because you should have seen the completed contract.
Yeah, honestly, I, think that we went through it line by line, very detailed, and trust that will be completed, and I'll review it carefully one more time, but yeah, I look forward to having the opportunity to sign and get things rolling, so.
As long as we're in a meeting, I think the board can approve what we've
That
changed.
sounds good to me, yeah.
As amended.
And then when Mrs. Hedlund has a chance to review, she can sign.
And I just want to say thank you, Mr. Olson, for taking the time to be so detailed and help us in this, and thank you.
When you may be alone in your.
For taking your
belief,
Wednesday
but that's all
night to go through this, and I appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
Okay, so we would need.
Are you gonna do the edits, Todd, and then send it to me or them, or do you want me to do the edits?
I can. I will.
I'm just asking, and then I'll make sure the terms of the contract are correct as to what they negotiated, and then I'll get a hold of you one way or another, or send it to you for you to peruse, and then we'll have a master maybe at some point that'll be signed by whoever needs to it. Does that sound okay, something like that?
So we still need a motion to go ahead and approve that.
Mr. Chairman, since I birthed this baby, I guess, some hints, I would like to make the motion that the board approve the superintendent employment contract with Mrs. Hedlund as revised.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the revised contract with Mrs. Hedlund. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. The one last thing, I guess, Kevin, talking about the transition time and possible compensation for that. Is that discussion we need to have tonight? Or can we kick that maybe to the next board meeting?
I think, yeah, and I think we'd have it right now. In our contract negotiation with Mrs. Hedlund, she offered to come in and work with Mr. Wilkerson in preparation to transition. And I guess she requested a stipend for that, which I believe is reasonable. And, the information that we don't have in the negotiation is a budget. I mean, we put a dollar value on that. Is there budget available for that? And what would be reasonable? I think.
Everybody's okay with the
Yeah,
concept?
absolutely,
The
yeah.
concept of doing that.
Absolutely, yes, that's a requirement, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And, I don't have enough knowledge of the budget to say how many days or how much funding would be reasonable to apply to that.
Yeah, and I'd almost say, and regarding, I don't know about the funding, but just having seen several transitions before like we have, whatever professionals feel you need to get up to speed and rolling, I'm pretty happy with. So we have a smooth transition.
So,
Yeah, I appreciate that opportunity and Mr. Wilkerson's willingness, and Mr. Rock called me as well and said that he'd be excited to spend some time with me, so we can have a smooth transition and it's less of an impact on staff and students. I think that would be a really great opportunity. So I appreciate that. I've become a superintendent and been handed the keys and not even known, which door. That's rough, so.
yeah.
Well, we can't expect success if you don't have enough prep time and
Yeah.
preparing for success, so.
Yeah, I also don't want to negatively impact the budget, so if you guys need time to meet on that and talk about it at your regular board meeting, whatever works, I'm comfortable with that. So.
Very good. Anything
How much
else?
you think it'd be required? How many days?
I was looking at, like I said, the school I'm currently at is 4 days a week, so definitely I can always have Fridays available. And then I thought maybe a week or so in June, depending on what Mr. Wilkerson thought would be beneficial or would work with his schedule. So I was thinking 10 to 14 days. And I believe I mentioned 5,000 to 10,000, depending on how many days you guys want to be here. But that was just kind of an idea.
I think in the past that was paid out on a per day basis as to what your what that salary was going to be.
Based on the annual.
Based upon the
Yeah,
annual
the daily
salary
rate
and
of
number
pay.
of days,
Yeah.
based upon the days,
Yeah,
their
that would
salary,
be
yeah.
fine too.
But historically, that's what we've
Yeah.
done several times.
Okay. So how many, if we're gonna use the 260 days, would that be reasonable?
That's what we'll use to figure the annual.
260, okay, so if you take your 90,000 divided by 260, that's about $350 a day. And if we're talking,
Yeah, so if it was 14 days, that'd be approximately $5,000.
Yeah, 10 would be about 3,500, 14
Yeah,
about 5.
Yeah, that's right,
Yeah.
4850, so. I mean, that's, 14 days gonna be enough? I mean, more than enough.
You know, so it might be, just a thought, it might be, rather than considering days, but topics. Budget, curriculum, you know, so that's another perspective around that.
Yeah,
Okay, so I think we can refine that maybe a little later on after we have a
Yeah.
little bit of time to look at the budget and see what's there. Okay?
Okay.
yep, thank you. Thanks for your
Anything
you.
else?
consideration.
Meeting adjourned.
You've all had a long day.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.